Good evening, everybody. This is HM1 2021. This is Ryan. This is actually within the last 2 days. I found a really efficient way to memorize both the federal supply codes off of Chapter 5 in your Corpsman manual, as well as the AMAL codes listed in the reference in Appendix A, and I think it's MCT. It's like 3 Tech 40A Appendix A. It's basically what goes over like the Fris shock trauma platoon, how all that stuff is meant for medical in the Marine Corps. So the first thing I'm going to go over is the federal supply codes. This is something that I picked up from one of Chief McCauley's videos and like how to personalize the information. I wrote down flashcards for every single number. I'm going to type up on this Excel spreadsheet that you can see like what numbers I use, what ditties I use to remember it. And honestly, this was something that sticked for me so well. I did the flashcards once, I shuffled them, and I got every single one right a day after without even thinking about it. So like I created these little mnemonics to try to remember what the numbers were. I've noticed for the HM1 exam, sometimes they'll ask like 1 or 2 FSC codes, sometimes they'll ask like a couple AMAL codes. It tends to switch off, but I almost always have one or the other. There's been a couple times where I had neither. And before I would always just give up and just focus on something else. But when I learned this technique of just trying to like apply meaning to the numbers instead of just flashcarding random numbers and then forget it in a couple weeks, this just helps me really remember like the meaning behind them. So again, the federal supply class, it has nothing really to do with the AMAL ADALs. I just have them both in one video because they're both supply numbers and they're both part of the logistics topic. They don't really have much to do with each other at all, aside from the fact that they're both numerical systems that pertain to different types of supply. So again, just brief shorthand, your federal supply class, FSC, is the 4-digit code. It's the first 4 digits of the 13-digit NSN. And it's just easy day in how to memorize it. So there's a bunch in your Corpsman manual, and I'm going to go over every single one. I read the 5132, the MCTP, the 6700, all in the HM1 bib. That was really the only stuff I saw for really supply management. Yeah, there's emergency medical supply, but I personally think that's more considered healthcare treatment, because if you read the HM1 subtopic, it's not supply, it's supply management, which is really what the AMAL stuff is, the Chapter 5 of your Corpsman manual, and that 6700 series instruction. I don't remember the exact number, but I know it's the 6700 one. It's like the 4 pages about the how to report equipment mishap for medical equipment. So anywho, the first one that comes up is 6505. Hopefully you can see that fine. So 6505 is the first FSC code, and it's drug/biologicals. I wrote the shorthand because it's a multiple choice exam. It's probably going to ask like which of these FSCs are drug biologicals. So if you don't have like the exact terminology in the book, I don't think that's going to be a big issue, because for me anyways, even if I don't have the verbiage 100% correct on my notes, I'm going to recognize it when I see the exam. So 6505 is drugs and biologicals. All of the FSC codes are 6500, so you really only need to remember, or 6500, which stands for medical and dental in general. So you only need to focus on the last 2 digits if you just remember it's a 4-digit number and the first 2 are always 65. So 05 is what I'm actually looking at. This is the very first one of the long list of them. And I think of 05 as the smallest number. It's about drugs. So what I think is cheap drugs. So cheap drugs, 6505. If you put this on a paper flashcard, that may help you. That was something that I never did until Chief gave me a little bit of insight for EAP stuff. And flashcards was something that I just stopped doing because of Blue Jacketeer. I think they're highly effective to still have. I'm just amazed that I picked this up so quickly for something that I just gave up on the last 5 years of studying. So 6505. So 05, drugs and biological, think cheap drugs, 05. The next one is 6508. I'll give you a heads up, I get a little wild with my ditties because they help me remember. This isn't really a ditty, but it's just a way of looking at the numbers. So 6508 is medicated, cosmetics, and toiletries. And again, so this is my way of thinking it. So 08, think of a sideways 8. That's like that infinity sign, right? It swirls. A toilet swirls. Toiletries. So again, for cosmetics and toiletries, I think maybe I got in a fight and I like flushed my wife's makeup. Toilet makeup 08. So flush cosmetics down the toilet. I would be afraid if I did that. So 6508, just remember, flush cosmetics down the toilet. Next one, 6509. This one is veterinarian stuff. Probably spelled that wrong, but it doesn't matter because that's the cool thing. So the official is drugs and biologicals for vet use. However, it's the only one that is about animals. So just veterinary stuff, 6509. How I remember that is I write veteran 9 Aryan. So veteran 9 Aryan. 09 vet stuff, 6509. Easy. 6510. Oop. Is surgical dressing materials. How I remember this one is, man, she looks like a perfect 10 in that dress. So in that dress, she's a 10. So again, 10. I don't need to worry about the first two numbers. If I remember they're all 65, I just need to remember the 10. In that dress, she's a 10. Dressing material. 6515, 6520. This one I don't really have a ditty for because this number just sticks to me. And that's basically medical. So 6515 is medical surgical instruments. And then 6520 is dental. So just think medical first, then dental. Let me make that column so it fits in the program. So 6515. So I just think 1520. 1520. To me, I think of like doing push-ups or something like 5, 10, 15, 20. So 1520, medical and dental surgical instruments. So just have that one memorized. For me, that just came quickly. So if you need to make a ditty, do. But the 1520 for me, just for whatever reason, that just popped in my head quickly. The next one up is 6525, which is X-ray stuff. The official name is imaging equipment and supplies. And my way of remembering that is, remember those old, like you put a quarter, you can snap a picture. A quarter is 25 cents. So 0, 25 cent photo. So 25 cent photo, 6525, imaging equipment and supplies. Next up is 6530. This one is hospital furniture. I am very close to turning 30, and I've noticed the closer to 30 I am, the more I move stuff, it kind of hurts a little bit afterwards. So I think in my 30s, moving hospital furniture hurts. So 30 hospital furniture hurts because I'm 30. Boom. Next is 6532. This one is hospital and surgical clothing and related items. So remember how in that 10 she looked like a 10? Yeah, in that surgery gown, you know, she's sick, she in the ER, she looks like a 2. So in that surgery gown, she's a 2. So that's how I remember that one. So 32 is the only one that ends in a 2 as well. So that's how I really focus more on the 2. But if you want to try to remember maybe someone 32, you either like or don't like, they, for whatever reason, they make you think of surgical clothes, make it personal. I don't think my technique for this will probably work for you too much, anyone watching, but if you create your own way of like making these little ditties, that might help you remember. This is something I've never tried before, and I was surprised that I got all the flashcards right on the first time up. The AMALs not so much, but the FSCs I picked up really quickly. So 6540, again, we're just looking at 40s. That is ophthalmic instruments. All right, so this one may hurt to say as my inner SARC counselors. Anyone ever drink a 40 and then your eyes start to go blurry? You know, like the 40 ounce you pick up at the liquor store? So I drank a couple 40s, or drank a 40 because it's just 140. and vision got blurry. So I drank a 40 and my vision got blurry. Ophthalmic instruments. Boom. Next one is 6545. And this is the replenishable, and I probably don't need the field medical stuff. Medical sets, kits, outfits. So basically field med stuff. I lost my orders of 3rd Med Battalion because I filled out of field med for being a little too chunky. So, and for me, I was there for 6 months. It was a very dark time for me. That was when I was ready to give up on the Navy. It took a very long time for me to readjust after being in field med for a while. So I just think, man, I would love to not go to love to not have to go back to Camp Lejeune until I'm at least 45, or more specifically Camp Johnson. I would never want to go back to Camp Johnson. So I would not want to go to, we'll just put TJ Camp Johnson until I'm 45. Can't really see it because it cut off, but yeah, so I don't want to go to Camp Johnson again until I'm 45. That's where the field med thing is, over there on Lejeune. That's what that area is called. So for me, that's my personal little quip that helped me remember that one. 6550 is the last one. This one I thought was kind of interesting that it was one of those, because this isn't something that comes up on any of the bibs. In vitro diagnostic substances. I am not sure if this is actually referring to IVF. I'm assuming it is. And this is the last number in your FSCs. So 50 is the biggest number. I know IVS is incredibly expensive. I know the military doesn't cover it. I don't think they do anyways. So I just think IVF equals expensive. And that just, if I remember, 5 is the cheapest. 50, or 5 is the smallest number, cheap drugs. 50 is the most expensive, IVS stuff. And then everything in the middle. I created flashcards. I went through this. It really helped create your own ditty if this doesn't work for you. This was something that it took me, like, I'll admit some of these were a little, these didn't come quick. It took me about an hour to think about these. It took me closer to 3 for the AMALs, which I'm going to go over in a second. But yeah, that's it for mine. If you want to take a pause the image, I'm not going to save this because I have it on flashcards. So please take a screenshot, pause the video if this is something you want to write down for your own study stuff. But that is what I have for FSCs. The other one I have are the AMAL ADAL. These are the ones forever I gave up on because I've never dealt with them. From people I've heard that have had to. I had one guy tell me he basically dreams of these numbers, that it's something that just gets ingrained doing it for a while. I have not had that luxury. So for me, these are just reading stuff I don't really understand because I've never been with the Marines, but creating this system where I can remember them has just helped me, at least for the exam. And one day if someone asks me what an AMAL is, you know, even if I'm not with the Marines, if I'm dealing with them, I will be able to point out which one does what. Hopefully I'll still remember this system. So the AMALs are a little bit different in that I have a lot of sets of 2. Reason being, they're not all of them, but a good bit of them. One number is equipment, and the number right after is supply. And there's a couple that it doesn't quite line up. I put them on the same flashcard, so I tried to remember the 2 together. So I'll just kick off for the first one so you can see what I'm talking about. 618 and 619 are both lab. Lab equipment is 618. Lab supply is 619. So just think lab equipment, then supply. My way to remember, if you look like an 8 kind of looks like a B, so I'll just write LA8, but can you see how that kind of looks like lab, LA8, LAB? And that's how I remember equipment, then supply. On Blue Jacketeer, they also had questions like, what are the numbers, how many? I have that written on my flashcard. I'm going to drill through it. I don't have a way to remember like what the equipment numbers are for everything, but for a lab supply, it's for 100 patients. And so 16, 18, 16, 19. Next up, we have 627. One of my favorite Disney cartoons is Lilo and Stitch. So I think about Stitches. He was Experiment 626 in the movie. So that's Xray. This is both equipment and supply, so there's only one number for Xray in the Appendix A of the MCT. There may be different ones that are in another reference, but I'm mostly going off of just what is in the MCT, because I didn't see AMALs in any other of our bibs. So I'm just focused on what was in that Appendix A. So Xray, I think experiment 626 plus 1. So because 626 plus 1 is 627, 627 in Xray. I know it doesn't really work like this, but in my head I'm imagining someone getting an Xray after they got really jacked up stitches to make sure there was nothing left over before they closed the wound. I know that's just bad medicine, and probably you're supposed to debride and clean before you sew somebody up, but I just think of Xray after stitches, 627. The next pair is 631 and 632. This is the shock surgical team triage, equip and supply. So again, it's the pair. The 631 is equipment, the 632 is supply. How I think of this, I think 1, 2, 3. So if you look, 631 has a 1, 632 has a 2, and then triage kind of sounds like 3. So 1, 2, triage. So that's what I wrote, 1, 2, triage. And this is the only, like for other ditties I might have tried to make it more specific for the shock surgical team triage equipment stuff, but there's nothing else in any of the AMALs or ADALs that say anything about triage in that bib. So I try to focus on 1 or 2 keywords that stick out, and then I hope on just doing that flashcard memory, and then when I see the exam, because it's multiple choice, one of them will look more familiar than the others. So I'll just look for that keyword triage. So next up we got 633 and 634. The official one for this one is Acute Care Ward Equipment and Supply. So 633. You ever notice how a W looks like a 3 on its side? And it starts with 33. So there's 2 W's right there. That makes me think of ward. Yeah, acute care, but ward. I try to find the one keyword and tie the words to that. So 3s look like sideway W's to me. And I just remember, if it's equipment, then supply. 633 is equipment, then 634 is supply. Next up we have 635/636. This one is probably the one that most people are probably already familiar with. That's your BAS equipment and supply. This one, again, I think of supply stitch. It's a little, what do we call a bunch of names start together? Not allegory. Yeah, the words where you have a bunch of things start with the same letter. I know it starts with an A. It's a big word. I completely forgot it off the top of my head. So 635, 636. 636 stitch plus 10. Because 626 plus 10 is 636. However, be careful, because the 636 is the second number, not the first number, but I couldn't think of any way to remember BAS with 35. So I think supply stitch 626 plus 10 is 636. And I threw supply stitch in there, so that reminds me, equipment goes first. So if supply is 636, equipment is 635. Next up we have 637/638. This is PrevMed maneuver, PrevMed Heck. This one's different because it's not necessarily equipment then supply. I don't exactly know what maneuver means for the terms of the AMAL. I'm going to have to look that up. It's not in the chapter we have to read, or I didn't see it if it is. Maybe I need to give a little bit more love to the PrevMed, the P5010, and look at some of the PrevMed references. But I'm looking at 637/638. If you think antibiotics after an injury, so I know big TCCC is antibiotic is a prophylaxis. So think, you go to the BAS because you're hurt. What do you do after you get hurt? You get antibiotics, which is, I mean, not really PrevMed, it's more medical, but that's what helps me think of PrevMed. It's wounds are gross, that's why you take the antibiotics. PrevMed, maneuver, then tech. So then I just think antibiotics after injury. 637, 638. Next up I have 639, 640. This is OR. And how I think of this one is, first I wanted to write 49ers, but then I realized it's 39 and not 49. So I just stuck with the 9 NORs. So like similar to the 49ers, but don't put the 40 in your mind, but Niner is already stuck in my head. So instead of Niners spelled like that, 9 no, or I'll do it so it's more obvious. 9 ORs, 9 ORs, 39 equipment, 40 supply, 9 ORs. Next up is 645/646. And this one is Fris. It is not equipment and supply. This is 48 hours followed by resupply. But again, it's similar to equipment supply. So if you think the stuff you need first and then your resupply, that's how I think of that. It's the only AMAL that ends in a 5. It's the only, actually it's not the only one because it's 45. There's 35 as well, but I have 35, 36 ingrained for the BAS stuff because of my stitch. So let's just put other so it doesn't get confusing. If you have your own way, do it. I just want to show you my method, and this, I was surprised this was so effective. So only other AML that ends in a 5. Also, another way to think about it, because I wrote both of these. So for the 3940, 3132, it also states in Appendix A that it's 1 box of supply, or 1 box of equipment to 2 boxes of supply. Fris, however, is 1:5 ratio. So it's one of the 48 hours to 5 of the resupply. Maybe it is equipment supply and I just misread it. But the big thing is Fris is 45 and 46. So just think the 1:5 ratio. And it's 46, not 36. Next up is 647. This one I made a weird made-up word that just sounded funny to me. It's the en route on the en route care system. However, it's shortened to just ERCS in the appendix. So I think ERC7. I don't know what ERC7 means to me. It just popped in my head and I can't get it out. So ERC7. Because again, if you do like ERCS, ERC7, ERC7. So boom. Next up is 648. This one's Casevac, which I guess I mean, I know they're a little similar. They have their differences between the ERCS and the Casevac stuff. However, I wanted to keep them separate at 648, not 78. Just because to me, it's not the same name. Like, even if they're similar enough where one could be equipment or can be supply, the name is totally different. It would trip me up if I tried to put them together. So 648 is Casevac. So Cas 8 vac. Casevac. Cas 8 vac. Boom. 48. 650 is PrevMed it's OEHS, which stands for Occupational Environmental Health Surveillance. It's defined more in the MCT, but not in the chapter I have to read, so I didn't go over that one too much. Probably will if it's on a future, or hopefully when my time is up. I'm already HM1 taking the chief exam. I'll be looking at hopefully other chapters in this. So 50, the zero looks like an O, and PrevMed OEHS. So think 50. So 50, 50 ends in 0, which looks like an O, as in OEHS. Boom, 650. This one is both equipment and supply. 651, the entomologists, PrevMed entomologist. So the bug people. before I joined the military, that was before like 2008, 2009, 2010. That was before like streaming was really a thing. So when I grew up, like every night we would watch TV at my house. We had like the one TV at the front. We didn't really have a computer. It played some old stuff, but the computer wasn't like we have computers now. It wasn't like you could stream Netflix on it. And I remember one of the nights for TV night, we'd all watch CSI together. And I remember one of the first CSI seasons, there was that dude that knew a lot about bugs. I think his name was Grissom or something to that effect. It was like one of the first seasons of CSI ever. But I remember entomology, #1, because I remember for like after watching that, I used to think I was going to be a bug guy when I grew up. My interest in it kind of faded, but bugs are still #1. I think bugs are cool. And also, if you don't like bugs, if you look at the word entomology, ent1mology, 51, PrevMed entomologist. And you can think of 1551 as both PrevMed. The 0 is the OEHS, and the 1 is ent1ology, bugs. 652 is CBIRF. I could not find what CBIRF actually stood for. However, from the context clues of just reading the rest of the block on the end Appendix A, basically it's to do with like sea burning or high yield explosive, so giant bombs. I think of 652 as the 2 bombs that were dropped in Japan during World War II. And I think of 2, I wrote big ass bombs, so excuse the profanity, but write whatever helps you remember. That helps me remember. So 2 big ass bombs. And yeah, it was the 40s, not the 50s, but it was close enough to the 50s. So 2 big ass bombs slightly before the 50s. 2 is the last number, and then 50s. So 2 big ass bombs dropped in Japan. And we'll put before the 50s. And maybe I can shorten this. There we go. Yeah, it's just another way to remember. If you got something better, please use it, but this is already stuck in my mind. 660 is MARSOC. So when I think of MARSOC, sock just sticks out to me. So socks, 6 socks, 660. That one was kind of a stretch, but it popped, and that was when I did. Unlike the FSCs, this took me a couple times of trying to remember my my system because I had a lot of numbers. After like the 3rd run through of my flashcards, I consistently got every single one right. So socks, 660. Then it jumps. Now we have 685, 686. This is Geo Mission Hot Cold. Basically, if you're gonna actually cold hot, I want to keep the order how it is with the numbers. So cold hot. So basically what these are is if I'm somewhere really hot or really cold, there's AMALs that it didn't say exactly what's in them, but I assume it would be more like heat blankets, stuff like that in cold areas, maybe more hydration stuff in hot areas. Maybe they have the 1100 calorie MRE pack add-in, stuff like that. It didn't say what's in it, but in my head I'm just thinking of what could I use when it's extra hot or extra cold, extra hot. So I just remember hot and cold, Katy Perry song. So hot or cold, so hot and cold. However, it's actually cold and hot. So let me update that on mine. I'll think of another way. Oh yeah. So if you think that older Adam Sandler movie, Mr. Deeds, where he basically like got that huge inheritance, there was a guy that had a really jacked up frostbitten foot. It was like the black foot. I think of that dude's foot, the frostbitten black foot. How many toes are on a foot? 5 toes, 685. So 5 toes. And then hot. What do you do when someone has freezing toes? You try to warm them. So think 5 toes cold, warm 10, or warm them up next. So 685, 686, 5 toes, warm them up. In the 80s, all have to do with like there's another set of 80s, but the 80s are basically like environmental type stuff. So just think environmentate something. 687 and 688. This is also geo, however, instead of hot or cold, it's CBRNE. And the difference between the two is 687 is individual. So like mop gear, how is one person getting deconned? 688 is unit level, so I just imagine it's a way bigger box for 688. And then I kind of follow up from what I was thinking before. So 685 is cold, 686 is hot, 687 is hot in the radiological sense. So 687 rad hot, your skin's melting off, not because it's hot, because of the radiation for a person. And then what's worse than a person getting really hot? An entire unit getting really hot. Then unit. So individual, then unit. 687, 688. Then it jumps again a couple numbers. 971 is 691/692. This one is Medlog test repair equipment. So again, test repair equipment, Medlog. The first one's equipment, the second one's supply. I think of, in general, a lot of equipment military gets or has, it's kind of outdated and old. So I just think 90s, like 90s level equipment. And then 91, 92. My birth year is 92, so again, that sticks to me. I'm like, oh, I'm a 90s level equipment. I am born in 1992. My sister was born in 1991. So I think 1991, 1992, back to back, 90s level equipment, just like we are getting. Next up is 699. This is sick call. This is for 300 deployed Marines for 30 days. I'm more focused on the numbers, but I also wrote down a couple of the levels. I don't know if I've ever seen that on an exam, but I think it's kind of fun pop trivia to know. I'll probably do a more in-depth studying. I don't think I'll do a video because right now I'm in the cram session for my exam within the next couple weeks. So I am more at kind of the big level. What are some of the quick things that I can try to remember before the exam is really my focus now. So 699 sick call. So 99. So think 9, 9. Kind of sounds like fine, fine. I haven't worked in sick call, but I have worked in an ER where a lot of people that showed up were pretty fine, fine. Even though they went and they thought they needed help, they were fine. So I think sick call 699, they're probably fine, fine. They might not be, but again, that's a way to remember. And the last one is 662. So 662 is not an AMAL, it is an ADAL dental. If you're remembering your SSIC codes, which I hope for the HM1 exam you are, 6600 is dental stuff. So 66, or so we'll put dental. The technical name is Field Dental Operatory Equipment and Supply in one. So before I got ahead of myself, so remember 6600 SSIC is dental. That doesn't 100% work because we have 660 as MARSOC. However, this is 662. 6 tooth. So 6 tooth. So just kind of say that out loud to yourself a couple times, like 6 tooth. Field Dental Operatory Equipment and Supply. There is no other ADAL on that appendix, so there's only one you have to remember. So dental, 662, 6600 series is mostly dental, and then add 6 tooth. So just like with the FSC, just to kind of wrap it up, the first digit you don't have to worry about because it's 600 for everything. I don't know if all the AMLs are 600, similar with like how all the FSC 6500s are medical dental equipment. I don't know if these are just the ones presented, but I do know if there are less numbers I have to remember, I will. So I block out the 6. When I see that on the test, if there's anything that doesn't start with a 6, I'm going to immediately cross it out. If there was a reference somewhere I missed it at this point, about a week or so to the exam, I don't have time to find cone and look for more AMALs or ADALs. So I'm going to focus on what I know and I'm going to build up what I know. And hopefully, even if I don't know the right answer, I'll know like what the wrong answers are and I can just screen them out. So that's kind of my phase right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to make another video, but for me, figuring this out was like a light bulb. I really appreciate Chief McCauley. The specific video, if you're watching, Chief, that I saw was the one on your decedent affairs. It was one of the numbers. I think it was like the casket size. You had that tied with a name, or it was one of the forms. I don't remember exactly how you did it, but I remember one of the things he said was like try to make it personal to where you will remember. And that's what I did, and I was surprised how one run through of the FSC flashcards, I didn't get a single one wrong. I did the AMALs, I got about 3 or 4 of them wrong, but then I kind of just re-enunciated and worked on my little keys a little bit more, and then after a couple times I got them all right. I'm probably going to go through both my flashcard decks a couple times a day until the exam, because supply was like my worst one. I'm also going to probably do the same thing. I probably won't do a video on it though, for like the types of white blood cells. I'm trying to think of like the other numbers I easily get messed up. The different decedent affairs programs, timelines, what are the different spaces after a lot of the areas in the formatting, just basic correspondence manual stuff. Right now I'm just going to focus on that kind of stuff. So I hope this helped. For me, this was just, it blew my mind of just tying little phrases to it. And I never did this before ever in either my college life or my study life. And I think this is a game changer. Like, I am no longer afraid or worried about forms or numbers anymore. If I can try to make up a phrase for each one, I might just flashcard out the bibs, because I want to focus more on the bibs I want to understand the SSIC manual. I don't want to just flash memorize those like I am with these. I think SSICs, for anyone going up for HM1, HM2, honestly any of them, I think the SSIC is important to understand because it's a classification system. And if you understand it, it'll help you guess like NavMeds and stuff as well, where if you're just doing flash trivia, it might not have that drilled in. But enjoy the rest of your weekend. I hope this helped.